At the time of this recording, I'm 33 years old. I'm an INTJ under the Myers-Briggs typology system, an Olympian and a mindset coach. I spent years feeling misunderstood, like people didn't see me, didn't get me, or they valued me for the wrong thing. I no longer feel that way. If I could go back and talk to my 20-year-old self and give her some advice on how to feel understood a lot faster, here's what I would say. To save years of frustration, isolation, and wasted energy, I've thought about it quite a lot. Here are 11 brutal truths that I wish I knew earlier about why you might feel misunderstood, and also some steps on what to actually do about it. Some of these will really resonate, some will be really confronting, and a few of them will feel like a punch in the gut. Also, disclaimer, if you have being misunderstood as part of your identity and you're not looking to change it, please don't watch this video. Number 1, I really hated my birthday. So like everyone's exhausted after Christmas and New Year, and you know, they're going back to work soon, and it really can often be forgotten. I tell everybody I hate birthdays. I hate my birthday. I don't remember everyone else's birthday. Don't get me presents. I don't tell anyone about it, and I don't want people celebrating me. I think it's a little bit ridiculous, like you didn't do anything on your birthday. But what I started to realize is that it's actually a pattern of me doing this across like multiple areas of my life, not just my birthday. So I used to think things like, I'm always there for everyone else. Why doesn't anyone show up for me? Or why doesn't anyone like ask what's really going on for me or how I'm really doing? But if I look back, what I realized is I made it really almost impossible for them to do so. I never shared when I was struggling. I always brushed off compliments. I couldn't really handle them. And I always told people I was fine. And then I would feel undervalued, underappreciated, and unseen when they would believe me. So lesson 1 is you might be the reason that you feel misunderstood. So as humans, we all have these internal maps or internal operating systems based on how we make meaning of the world. I call them mental blueprints. So we have this internal mapping, and that's used to help us successfully navigate the world and life. What tends to happen as part of the human experience, so everyone does this, is that your brain and your nervous system will often run off outdated maps that once were useful, but they're no longer optimal for who you are now. And so they start to really cause issues as we grow and evolve and learn. Your survival brain is trying to keep you safe and use less energy, while your evolving mind is trying to grow and expand and learn and change. And that really creates a cognitive dissonance and a lot of discomfort. So what likely happened for me in this celebration situation is sometime in my past, from the time that I was 0 to a certain age, probably between 3 and 8, sometime in that experience of mine when I was a child, I probably had a expectation or an excitement about a celebration and it wasn't met. So what my nervous system did was let's have some behaviors, beliefs, some strategies to deal with this in the future so that I don't feel so hurt if people don't celebrate me. So all of those systems get put in place in terms of don't tell people how you are, tell people that you're not celebrated. All of these behaviors that I've subconsciously come up with, because 95% of our operating and our thoughts and behaviors is subconscious. So that's all happened in the background. That's stored as an appropriate map. And all that's happened is that map hasn't been updated to the person I am now. Once I can consciously be aware of that, then I can start updating it to the person I am now, and I'll no longer have those sorts of issues. So the takeaway from this is if you've told people that you don't need help, you've never shared your struggles, and you've really downplayed your wins, you've actually subconsciously taught them not to celebrate you. If you want people to meet you, you need to let them. So your action step is adopt the belief that whatever happens, take responsibility. If you want some more direction on how exactly to do that, you can go and have a look at a video I'll link there. Lesson number 2. Have you ever heard the story of the echoing caves? Well, it goes a little something like this. Leo had a beautiful voice, but he never felt good enough unless everybody thought so. So what he did is he set off on search for this mythical echoing cave, a place that was said to reflect your true sound, to show undeniably that he had a beautiful voice. When he finally found it and he sang, the echoes came back warped and harsh. The more he tried to please the cave, the worse it sounded. Frustrated, he stopped. An old, wise wanderer was passing by and said, "The cave's echoes is like the opinions of others, ever-changing and often reflective of their own nature, not yours. If you let every echo define your worth, you'll always be off key." Realizing the wisdom of the old wanderer's words, Leo returned to his village. He continued to sing, but now for the joy that it brought him, not for the approval of others. Over time, his genuine passion resonated deeply with the villagers, and even those who were once indifferent began to appreciate his heartfelt performances. Interesting enough, it wasn't until recently that I realised anything that I struggled with had anything to do with self-worth. Or I guess it was only recently that I was able to admit that to myself. So lesson 2 is stop outsourcing your self-worth and let go of control. Takeaway is that seeking to be understood can be a sneaky way of asking others to try and validate you. Wanting to control how you're seen by others comes from fearing a misconception. But your worth is not defined by how much others get you. It's defined by how much you own yourself and who you are. You don't need to be fully understood to be fully valued. Lesson number 3. There's actually kind of 2 lessons in one that I've learned with this one. For some reason, I used to believe, and I had plenty of wonderful friends, but I never really felt connected. I used to believe that I had to have, like, my friends, or my very close friends at least, they had to be really fully aligned with me, like they had to understand me, who just really got me. And there just seemed to be no one that I felt like was a really close friend in a way that I thought was enough, I guess. And I always felt really lonely, even though I had plenty of friends in my life. So there's this entrepreneurial coach, Dan Sullivan. I would highly recommend his book. It's called Why 10x is Easier Than 2x. And he was saying, if you want to transition from being a solopreneur to a CEO, you have to be able to trust that there are other people that can do what you can do. And at the very least, you might not be able to find someone who can do everything exactly what you can do, but you will at least be able to find multiple people that together can do what you can do. And then the bonus that comes with that is they have parts of what you can do, plus they have all of these other skills and insights that you don't have yourself, and they can really elevate everything you do. So the same is with friendships. Connection is not a one-size-fits-all. You might have one friend that you go out and party with, one friend that makes you feel cared for but that doesn't want to play board games, that one friend that makes you feel deeply seen but they're like rubbish at like making you feel emotionally safe, or that other friend that you have so much fun with but they will never ever check in or get back to you because they're off gallivanting the world. Expecting one person to meet all your needs or ruling them out for anything that doesn't match you guarantees that you will stay lonely. So the takeaway is that different people reflect and bring out different parts of you, and that doesn't make them in any way an ill fit. It makes all your connections way richer. The other thing that I realized is that I thought that being reliable, being insightful, and being solution focused made me a really good friend. I always provided my friends with things that I believed would improve their lives. And it came from a place of love and care. But what I thought was best for them, even if they might not realize themselves what that was. But when I was about 26, one of my closest friendships completely fell apart. And it took me a lot of years to actually be able to reflect on it and realize that I actually wasn't being the friend that I thought that I was. Now, at this time, this was the first time that I reached out specifically to ask for help because I knew that I didn't do that. And it completely backfired, which then I was trying to do the thing. I was trying to ask for help, and it completely fell apart and went as bad as it could for me. It felt like that. It was probably over dramatized, but it felt like that. And it emotionally shut me down for a really long time. So this was a really painful lesson for me to learn. And as I said, it took me a really long time to work it out. and work out what happened. So hopefully you can take these lessons and apply it without having to go through that. So I'm not going to go into the details of what happened there, but to illustrate my point, I'm going to use the movie Ron's Gone Wrong. So there's this weird, geeky middle school kid called Barney, and they live in this world where all these kids get these robots, these personal robots that they just like put their hand on to the robot and it learns everything about them and knows how to connect them with other people, and then their robots connect them with people that they can make friends with. And all these kids have a robot, all of them except Barney. So Barney's really sad that he doesn't get this robot. His family can't really afford him one. But then for his birthday, his dad surprises him with a robot because he knows how much he wants one. But because he couldn't afford it, he's gone and got him a dodgy one that had fallen off the back of a truck, and it was broken. So this broken robot couldn't learn about Barney. It didn't do what the other robots did, and it didn't know everything it needed to know to make Barney friends. So what Barney decided to do is he said, I will teach you how to be my friend. And it's a really interesting little movie about friendship. And so he's got this whole sticky note system about how to be my friend. And Ron's a robot, and Ron's learning all of these things about Barney on how to be Barney's friends. And he takes it very literally because he's a robot. There's a really interesting scene in there. Ron, the robot, ends up starting to notice things about Barney that Barney hasn't taught him that make him feel safe. For example, when they go to sleep, the robot noticed that Barney was scared of the dark. So you can see him pull up his internal database and put scared of the dark, and then he turns on his internal glow and he lights up the room for him to make him feel safe. And then there's another really powerful scene in the movie where Barney's losing his stuff at Ron. He can't do anything right and he's really upset. They have a fight, and then Ron pulls up his database and projects it, and then he takes out the sticky note that says, friendship is a two-way street, and he chucks it away. And it was such a good scene because Barney had been so focused on what it was that Ron had to do to be a good friend to him and what he thought being a good friend was, that he didn't pay any attention, because obviously it's a robot, so I mean understandable, but he didn't pay any attention to what was being a good friend to Ron. And then it sort of pivots and he starts learning about Ron as well, and they become really good friends, and you know, it's a beautiful ending to the movie. But lesson number 3 is real friendship requires realistic expectations. So while it's not about changing who you are, for me, with that situation, it became very important to me to learn how to read the room, because I wasn't very good at that, and to focus outside myself. I didn't identify as being a selfish person, and I don't think I am inherently am, but that's what it was. Like, I was focusing too much inside myself. And so I realized I need to focus outside of myself and recognizing the true impact, like the reality impact that others have for me and that I have on others. Because there were so many things that she did for me as a friend that I didn't actually notice before that. So you're never actually doing it alone. There's so many people caring for you and helping you that perhaps you just haven't quite noticed. The takeaway here is that being a good friend isn't giving what you think is helpful. It's about understanding what they actually need. You might be loyal, you might be deep, you might be insightful, and don't change those things about yourself. But if they need something else, they're not going to feel loved. And friendship is a two-way street. So your action step is to start noticing and learning how people actually feel loved and seen and understood, not what you think they need. So lesson number 4. It took me a really long time, which I'm kind of sad to say. It took me a really long time to let go of the need to say, I told you so. So sometimes you will see how things can pan out very clearly, and oftentimes it happens exactly as you said it would. But the more that I get into life and the more that I do things that I'm not comfortable with, the more I realize there are, different ways to skin a cat, or whatever the saying is. And I do get surprised at the outcome a lot of the time, like I'm proven wrong, which is quite humbling, right? And there are so many things within the ways that things turn out that I just couldn't consider when I was like kind of forecasting or pre-thinking about it, because I just didn't have the information, and I couldn't ever have the information until I started. So I used to get really, really frustrated and quite anxious about trying to explain to people what might happen if we go with that thing. But I've gotten a lot better at explaining to people, number one, that it makes me anxious because this is what I see, or this is what I think might happen. And most of the time I explain it and, that doesn't change their mind. But I've clearly explained my process and what I've thought about. What happens is, in retrospect, they notice it themselves. They notice that because you clearly articulated how you saw it coming and the steps that you thought might happen and they did happen, you will find that people over time understand that you can do that. And so you'll be valued for that skill. And then in situations where it's needed, you will start getting asked to utilize it appropriately or have more sway when you do say something. So it's not about trying to convince them. It's just letting others know what's going through your head. And over time, they'll start to trust what's happening, because some people don't have that ability to future forecast, just like you don't have the ability to do other stuff as well as they might be able to. The takeaway here is, if people don't get you, it's not always their fault. It's a prompt and an opportunity for you to use that you can refine and improve your communication skills. So your action step here would be to share what you see coming, explain your thinking, but release the need for the recognition or the need to say, I told you so. Let go of those moments. So lesson number 4 is, being misunderstood is feedback, not failure. Lesson number 5. I was a high school teacher for 4 years in science and maths, and I think it really helped me significantly improve my communication, because I had to find ways to explain things that sometimes were quite complex in ways that were really simple to understand, and in ways that were fun and accessible to lots of different types of learners. So what's the thing they say? They say, if you can't explain it to a 5-year-old, then you probably don't understand it as well as you do yourself. So that's kind of the philosophy I use whenever I'm trying to understand something, because sometimes I feel like I grasp it in my head, but I don't actually understand the details enough to explain it simply to someone. And so what I also do is, sometimes when I explain things to someone, I jump all around this place and I forget that I haven't shared like a foundational aspect with them, or I'm going like too many steps down the line and they're like not tracking whatever I'm saying because my communication is not clear and I'm not explaining it in a way that makes sense. So now it's really part of my process to like really break things down and make sure I understand it really clearly, so I can make it as simple as possible so that it's accessible to lots of different types of people. And it turns out that taking something quite complex and making it sound simple is actually a strength of mine. So I've really been able to lean into that, and I really enjoyed it when I did it teaching. So lesson number 5 is communicate at the level that others can receive. The takeaway is, if you want to influence and not just be right, speak to others where they're at and how they process information, not just where you're at or how you process information. Lesson number 6. I think a lot of people, not just INTJs, but especially people who value truth and logic, have this sort of attitude, and I know I certainly used to, that it's like people just can't handle the truth and that's not my fault. I mean, that's true, it's not your fault. But it all boils down to like, what do you really want? Do you want to be disconnected, isolated and lonely because you keep wanting to smash people over the head with your honesty? There are plenty of ways that you can learn to still speak your truth without hurting others with it. Learning this is strategic communication, and it's actually more logical, if you think about it, to consider it. You will have more influence, better connections, and be less isolated if you learn to regulate your honesty and deliver it in a way that is kind. Lesson number 6 is soften your honesty and share your insights strategically. The takeaway is you can be direct, but you can also be kind with it. That's just maturity. People will hear you better when they feel safe, not when they feel exposed. Lesson number 7. This one's really scary. I mean, it was for me anyway. If you want to live a truly connected life, you're going to have to start showing people the process, not just the finished product. I used to do this thing where I wouldn't tell anyone what I was doing until I would just come out and have done it. And it's actually pretty valid that I had that, because I remember, especially when I was younger in school and stuff, I would tell people these things and they wouldn't believe me, or they would put limits on what they thought was possible. So what I learnt to do in those internal maps that I made for myself subconsciously was to just keep it to myself instead of share it with people. But then that creates another problem, that through no fault of their own, people don't see how much work you've done or how much you put into achieving that thing. It creates a real disconnect between you and other people, because they just sort of think that these things come really naturally to you and you have no struggles, and that it's not something that you can connect on because they don't see because you haven't shown them the process. So lesson number 7 is let yourself be seen, the unpolished version. Real connection happens when people witness you becoming, not just the end achievement. So you need to let them. Lesson number 8. Emotional intelligence isn't optional or impossible. This is one just speaks for itself. I don't have much of a story here. A couple of books that I would recommend are The School of Life by Alan de Botton. I said that wrong. And The Road Less Travelled by M. Scott Peck. I would highly recommend those books. They helped me a lot understand life and understand other people. The takeaway from this is emotions are just data, and you need to learn how to read them in yourself and in others. Ignoring the emotional layer often leads to cold or disconnected outcomes. This is a skill. It's not a personality trait, and you can get really good at it. Lesson number 9. So what happens when you're in a situation where you experience your biggest fears? Your brain realizes that although painful, you're not going to die. So the fear gets a little bit less. So you then begin to accept a little bit more the things that you can't control. And when they happen, it doesn't mean that they don't hurt, but they don't kill you, and they do become easier over time. So the truth is that I am an intense person, and I am, air quotes, too much for some people. Those people aren't my people. So number 9 is rejection isn't fatal, it's a filter. The takeaway is that not everyone will like you. That's not proof that you're too much or not enough. It's proof that you're quite specific, and sometimes you just need to let rejection do its job and make room for the people who do resonate with you and who do challenge and allow you to be the person that you want to be. If you have any sort of fear of rejection or fear of failure or anything like that, I'll link a video where you can do an exercise for that one. Lesson number 10 is just for the INTJ women. You're not broken for not relating to most women. That's enough said for that one. You're not broken. And if you're watching this, you probably why you resonated so much with personality typology. If you feel like you're an outsider, it doesn't mean something's wrong with you. You're not cold, you're not too masculine. You're wired differently, and that's not a flaw, it's a feature. Lesson number 11. This is a little bit ouch to listen to or to acknowledge or accept, and requires a massive amount of self-honesty. But if you have any thoughts similar to nobody thinks of the consequences, why are people so emotional, inefficient, irrational, I just wish people would think more deeply, any of those type of thoughts, you might have a little hint of a superiority thinking. So lesson 11 is you are not better than anyone else. You are just different. Bitch. What did she say? It's very confronting. It's all subconscious, right? But I did have like a bit of a superiority thinking. Like I looked down on people, and I think that's not okay. So don't do that. So the takeaway, pride can be a mask for insecurity. You're not above people just because you value different things. Humility lets you connect, learn, and lead more powerfully. So your action step is to lean in with curiosity. Notice the strengths that you don't have, that other people have, even if they are things that you don't particularly value yourself. The best way to start is just notice things that you admire in other people though, because things that you admire are generally things that you struggle with yourself. If you're achieving lots of really cool things, but you're still feeling a little bit lost or isolated, you can check out the video here.